everyone, welcome back to the Roker Rapport. You're joining us in the off-season. Well, it's not quite the middle of the off-season, it's actually the beginning of the off-season. Feels like the middle of the off-season because there seems like precious little to do, of course, except speculate on who the new Sunderland manager is going to be. Now, lots of names being tossed into the hat, but it doesn't feel like early days again because we're all sitting here waiting for something to happen. But yeah, early days as far... Apparently they're going to be talking to people, their interviews set up, we don't really know what the full score is. But we've had people like Darren McInnes. He's been odds on for a while. Giggs was odds on today for a short period of time. I don't know if that's still the case. As you know, they change consistently. But Gav, what do you make of it all, my friend? What do you make of the Derek McInnes link? Do you think he'd make a good manager? Is that the sort of person we should be going for?
I do kind of worry that it's maybe too big a job for somebody like him. I don't think that bringing in a manager who hasn't worked at a big club is a problem. I just find that his last experience in England is going to hang over, basically, because it always seemingly does with these managers. And but McInnes, yeah, I think when you take into account his record at Aberdeen, it's not too bad, really. You know, he's worked on a small budget and he delivered, really, because being second to Celtic is pretty much what everyone at bar Celtic fights for in that league. And he's done it. He's done a pretty good job of it, especially this season. They've won a cup, got into Europe, and he's done it all without spending any money. I think they've only actually spent money on one player in the time he's been there, and that's a particularly big fee. Yeah, I think it's Kenny McLean or something like that, one of the midfielders there. So it shows that he can work on a small budget, and it shows that ultimately he's the type of manager that Martin Bainell want, because they aren't going to afford a lot of money to the next manager. So that kind of, writes off a lot of the better managers who are available, because they're not going to want it unless they're really desperate for work. Like the likes of Gary Monk, who he's going to walk into jobs at clubs where the circumstances are a lot better than what they are here. And obviously that then limits us to what we are available to take. You look at, say, you're talking about the odds before. You're looking at being linked with the position, and there's actually one in the eyes of the bookies. Anyways, there's only two people really into the job, which is Ryan Giggs, who's the favourite. You can get 8 to 15 for him with some bookies. So it does show that whoever's going to come in maybe won't be seen as a sterling choice in the eyes of the fans. But Derek McInnes, to me, he projects somebody who believes in himself, which I think is important first and foremost. I think Sunderland have to start looking at the problems we've created for ourselves in recent years, and one of them I would say is bringing in managers who think they're doing us a favour. No more so than with David Moyes, who came to Sunderland and constantly reminded us of why we were lucky to have him and why the circumstances weren't his fault. Ultimately, the next manager needs to come in, look at the stuff afforded to him, the big stadium, fan base, fantastic facilities, small budget, and then look at it and go, look, there's something to work with here. I can do some, moving around of the squad, maybe less so than what David Moyes wanted. Part of the reason I think David Moyes left, because the club weren't prepared to financially back him in the way that he wanted, and maybe wanted to shuffle the squad around. I don't think that was at the top of the list. So bringing in somebody who might work with some of the players Moyes wanted to get rid of is essential too.
Giving them a fresh start, sort of thing. That's very important. Exactly. So McInnes, to me, he out of the managers available, if he is even available, because that's, like I say, let's not forget Aberdeen. He doesn't have to leave them. So. Oh God, less desirable than Aberdeen. Jesus, let's just say how the next couple of weeks pans out. But if he is the manager, I just hope people get behind him, because even if he isn't necessarily the first choice for them, him taking the job signifies a few things. It signifies that he's prepared to work with what's available, because I don't think that
well, managers that have came in recent years have professed they were promised things that weren't delivered. I think everything out in the open now, and we can't really lie to a manager again. So, McInnes is going to come in knowing exactly the situation, and if he is the man that comes, then to me that signifies that he's here to roll up his sleeves and get on with it,
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you were just talking about David Moyes a little while back, about how his attitude towards us was like that we didn't deserve him, do you know what I mean? He's almost too good for us, and it's like, I mean, I swear to God, there must be some sort of mental health facility in Merseyside somewhere that's looking of Moyes' description. Do you know what I mean? Because that makes him sound fucking batshit crazy, like he's just got out the fucking loony bin. Do you know what I mean? When you look at what he's done now, it's incredible that someone like that could have such a high opinion of himself. Do you know what I mean? Through that sort of sheer stubbornness, and I don't know. We can't rant too much about Moyes now. He's gone. He's gone. It's all over. We don't have to much. I should tell you all at this point. I forgot to mention, I have some guests with me tonight. We have Gav, obviously, we just heard from, but we've also got Graham and we've got Jimmy. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, very well. Very well, Damien.
Good times.
I'm good. Same old. Missing the football. I guess we all are. Weirdly enough.
It's terrible, isn't it? Like, I didn't realise until, like, I think it was yesterday.
A week.
Yeah. That was it. And it hit me, and I thought I was prepared for this off-season, but I'm not. It's almost like getting, like, there's an I think someone said that, actually. There's an injection of excitement almost, isn't there? There's like, gone is the trepidation of fearing relegation and things like that, and now there's this exciting new thing to look forward to. I think Tom, actually, Tom Walsh, wrote an article, or he's about, by the PS, he'll have published an article for you about how he's looking forward to the Championship, what he won't miss about the Premier League, and in that he's saying about how he's looking forward to actually starting a season pursuing a trophy. Do you know what I mean? And how different that is for us compared to them. I completely see that. That really hit the nail on the head. So, yeah, do look out for that. Graham, what do you make of the whole manager situation, buddy?
I think, McInnes wouldn't have been on my list of people at the beginning, but I'm kind of getting more into the idea of it. I think we've been through every manager possible. We've had a fascist. We've had the young manager. We've had the old thinks he's too big for the club manager that's well past the sell-by date. We've had the People's Choice, Martin O'Neill. We've gone through the whole lot. So I think realistically, the expectations of what Sunderland are pretty low at the minute in the fan base. So
it's just a really strange mental image I had of your list there, because it's like, would you put fascist on that list? What do we need as a manager? Ticked off. Yeah, fascist. Well, that's that done. We can move on now. No, sorry, carry on.
It feels like that sometimes, but it's like, I think with McInnes, I think the good thing is he's worked as who he's brought even further north of what would be London. He's not going to have the problem with that. We're going to be a big club in that division, so we should attract players that are of higher caliber there. But he can probably unearth some gems that don't have any issues with location and won't want to move to other clubs that maybe in stereotypically more fashionable areas. He's worked on a budget, and I think the most important thing is, yes, he did fill at Bristol City. And he has done a good job, spectacular at Aberdeen, a solid job. But I think the good thing about him is he's still really young. He's still got a lot to prove. And that Bristol City job, he may come to Sunderland and be like, this is my opportunity to totally blow that out with the water at a big club, totally turn a club like us around. I'm hungry for it. I think for a while, since probably the days of Poyet, we haven't had a manager that's necessarily been that hungry. They've been experienced, or the club similar size to McInnes. It's a huge club. Let's be honest. He's got quite low expectations in the fan base because he's replacing a guy that pretty much everyone hated, and he's got an ability to turn previous failures in the same division around with a club that is 10 times the size of Bristol City. And I don't think he strikes me as the kind of guy that fears a job. He generally doesn't. He played for Rangers, so he's played under the big expectations as well. So I don't think he'd be fearsome of coming to a big club, but the fact that the expectations are low and he's hungry, he's young, and he's got a point to prove, I think it could be a pretty good appointment, actually.
Fair enough. Good points. What about you, Jimmy? What do you make about this potential manager?
Well, we've got two front runners I've mentioned. One's McInnes, who, like the boys mentioned, would come with the right mentality. He'd bring some enthusiasm to the job. He's a manager who's ostensibly on the up, which is exactly what we need after Moyes, somebody that's going to come here with that right mentality. And the other gigs, and I just say everything about that option. I mean, he's somebody who, like Tim Sherwood, has sat out and tried to rest on his playing career to get him a big job, who's in no rush to test himself going down the lower leagues, who's sat out for the full year. He spent 2 years carrying around Lou Van Gaal's clipboard, and he seems to think that means he can walk into any job in the top 2 tiers of English football that might become available. So really what you're looking at is one guy who, he had a tough time at sea, but like the lads mentioned, that was a long time ago when he was very young in his coaching career. He's now had 10 years experience. He's only 2 years older than Giggs. So you've got the option between proven records, who's actually gone and taken Aberdeen from a club who was consistently finishing near the bottom of the SPL to a club that's finished second 3 years in a row. So you've got somebody with a bit of a CV, with some experience, who isn't used to dealing with the tier of player that he'd be dealing with in terms of the wages they're on, in terms of where they played before Sunderland, if he was to come in. But really, the other option's quite terrible. You look at the other people on the odds, and you're looking at people that are either doing limit in the Championship, who are unlikely to want to come to us, sort of your Kanovic's, your Wagners, and that's old former players that have no managerial experience. So really, at the moment in my head, it's kind of McInnes or bust. He's realistic. He ticks a lot of the boxes in terms of being young and on the up. So with me, McInnes or bust at the moment.
Fair enough. I seem to be getting this this consensus, this general consensus that we're very limited to what we can expect from the caliber of managers to expect to be interested in the job. I mean, is that really fair? Are we being completely fair on the club? I know it's a difficult situation. It's painted as like one of the hardest jobs in English football at the moment, I suppose, or certainly the most short-lived. Is that really a fair thing to say? What do you reckon, Gav? Are we going a bit overboard with the wouldn't touch Sunderland with the barge pole? I think a lot of managers would be happy. Do you know what I mean? I think a lot of good quality managers would be happy with the level of support we've got and what it means. Do you know what I mean? The building at this club. I think that's a massive selling point of it. More the potential more than what it's currently capable of.
To a degree, yeah. But like I mentioned earlier, Gary Monk, for instance, is probably of all the managers on the free market, Championship standard or low Prem standard, he's probably the best. And there's plenty of clubs looking for managers this summer who are, I would say, are more primed for a rebuild or primed for a manager coming in and putting his own stamp on it. I think the issue really is that whoever comes in, and we'll probably get on this later, but they won't have a lot of say in what happens behind the scenes in terms of transfers, in terms of coaching staff. So you've got to really, that's going to limit who you can bring in. I mean, I'm looking now at the odds, the managers who have been linked. Giggs is the favourite, but I don't know why, really. I can only presume that somebody hired some stupid manager and it crashed the betting market. Then beyond that, you've got like Simon Grayson at Preston, who, to be fair, has done a decent job at quite a lot of Championship clubs on a limited budget, so you can see why he's northern, but again, not really succeeded anywhere. Maybe he's the type of manager that you do give the step up to because he's done well at a lot of smaller clubs. Pardew ruled himself out, but for some reason is fourth favourite. Nigel Clough he came in a bit the other day in the odds, and I'm not sure why, because again, another manager who's bounced around a few clubs and hasn't really done much. Burton seems to be his comfort zone. He was there for 10 years before he left. And then you're looking further down the list. You're looking at the likes of Paul Heckingbottom at Barnsley, who actually used to play for us. Might appreciate the step up, but I mean, Barnsley seem to be a club who are fairly stable in the Championship, and that's kind of what worries me. Even though they're coming from lower clubs, lower down the food chain, some of these managers are in their comfort zones, and stepping out of that to come and manage Sunderland is quite daunting, because quite a managers have come to Sunderland and done nothing. Do you want to be the next in that line who comes to Sunderland, fails, and then is ultimately it's a mark on your CV? I don't know. I just think that when you look at experience that's available, there's managers like McLaren and, like I said before, Pardew, Ali McCoist, Paul Lambert. It's not exciting anybody that list, and that's the thing. Sunderland need to bring in a manager who is on the up, like Jimmy said before. McInnes might have failed at Bristol, but at the end of the day, he's done well at Aberdeen. He's done well enough to be linked with a move out of the SPL to a club like Sunderland. So that does show his pedigree. The problem we're going to face all the way through this process is that there are so many constraints that when these candidates sit down with Martin Bain and Ellis Short, they're either going to be happy enough to play along with it or they're not. And the ones who are happy enough to play along with it, I fear, are just looking for a new job and have been maybe hanging around for a while. The likes of McLaren and the likes of Paul Lambert, who would probably just take any job in the Championship at the minute. So I'm not excited by that list, if I'm honest. But I do think that the perception of Sunderland is we've publicly been through the ringer for the last 2 or 3 years to the point where everybody knows our business, and convincing somebody with real talent to step up is going to be difficult unless they're coming, I would say, from League 1 or 2. That could be, if McInnes isn't interested, you could be looking at managers further down the food chain.
The one that stands out to me is Heckingbottom, in terms of that he's somebody that could also be potentially on the up. That has to deal with all his best players getting sold at Barnes. Consistently has to rejig his team around, who's very young, who's not been managing for that long, and who's got Barnsley with one of the lowest wage budgets there to be a consistent Championship team. And I think that's really difficult to do. Whereas Grayson, he had the failure at Huddersfield. He got moved on at Leeds. Heckingbottom's somebody that's used to be moulded, that's used to working in difficult situations where not everything's going to go for him at boardroom level. And he's the one name in that list that, to me, stands out as just a level of it in terms of what the club needs and who the club should take a risk on.
Well, it's interesting, all this talk about whether we can, like Sunderland itself, can attract these sort of managers, whereas when you're really thinking about it, what's got in the way hasn't been the club, and it hasn't been Sunderland AFC, has it? It's been the hierarchy. So what we're really asking, the question is really, are these managers going to be in a relationship with Ellis Short and Martin Bain, or whoever Ellis Short will replace Martin Bain with when he inevitably doesn't do his job properly, quote unquote. So that's the interesting one for me. It's more about a manager looking at the owner and deciding whether or not, I mean, that would normally just be it'd be a big part of your decision making if you're approached by a club, but it wouldn't be all of it. Do you know what I mean? You'd probably get most of your joy, as long as you were told you had control over this and that, then you would get most of your joy from that. But in reality now, if you're looking at an owner who, from all accounts, from all we can tell, unless he's either completely delusional, this owner, Ellis Short, he's either completely delusional and poor in his judgment skills of potential managers, of people to employ to help the running of the club, or he's a liar. It's one of these two things, because we're talking about the law of averages now. Like, surely it's statistically impossible that every single manager over the last 10 years has had bad things to say about him afterwards. Do you know what I mean? And it's all the theme of not having enough money, getting offered a job, taking the job, and it's tying yourself into a 3-4 year contract as well. Do you know what I mean? And getting to this point, inevitably, where you turn around and say, the squad I've got, not good enough. I'm going to need X amount of money. And they act as if, or they certainly give the impression, these managers, or ex-managers now, that they were made promises, and they were given these mysterious figures, God knows what they were, and that was what they'd be able to call upon. That was the sort of support that they'd have from their owner. But it doesn't seem to be the case, does it? That's what's really confusing me. I don't see how any manager, now any potential manager, can look at the relationship, the business relationship, the personal relationship, given the examples that they can see, that they would have with that owner. Because I can't imagine going and working with Ellis Short. I'm not saying he'd ask me to, but do you know what I mean? If that was a possibility, I can't say I'd be saying without anxiety about the role. I'd be treading on eggshells, because this is not a man who has it all planned out. And if he does have it planned out, then he's got very different things that are going on. He's got a huge amount of factors coming into this that he doesn't let anyone know about. It seems to me that people go into this job without knowing the full story. Do you know what I mean? And all this bearing all this in mind, supposedly he's been selling the club, or he's been trying to sell the club for some time now. Rumours come and go. We've heard rumours that he's met investors or potential investors. He's turned them down because they didn't fit in with his idea of what the club should be ran like. You know what I mean? Supposedly with the footballing ethos, I don't know where he gets off thinking he's got that, like any kind of idea, like he should be the judge of that. We've had other rumours that he turned them down because there wasn't enough money. We've had rumours that no, he can't sell it because it's in too much debt. We've had rumours that he's clearing the debt and that's out, and therefore he's going to keep it. Do you know what I mean? Gav, help me out here, man. Like, what do we make from this guy? Because it seems to me like if you were walking into this job as a manager, or rather, if you were thinking about walking into this job as a manager, you would be proper anxious. Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't have a clue where you stand. Yeah,
well, it sounds as though that whoever comes in is not really going to be dealing with Short. I think he'd probably sign off on it. But it sounds as though they brought in Walter Smith, haven't they, to help Martin Bain deal with the all of the I can't get my words out, the negotiations. So maybe Short is happy just to pay that off. But if I was a manager coming and I knew what odds obviously went on publicly with the club, and knowing that the club's up for sale, for instance, I would be fairly nervous, I guess, about stepping into those shoes, because no manager expects to manage the length of the club, and because I think the average length of a job in management is probably about 18 months. So for me, whoever comes in is kind of going to be looking over the shoulder, immediately knowing that he's going to sell the club, or he wants to, or he may sell the club. So again, limits the list of managers that are available to us that would potentially come here, and that's when I start looking at the managers who've been from club to club who don't mind going anywhere as long as it's a payday. Paul Lambert again, Steve McLaren. It's like, is that what we're going to end up with? Or are we going to end up with somebody already on the coaching staff because it's cheap and it's easy to do? It does, because if a manager like Derek McInnes turns us down, no disrespect to him, but he's one job in English management was Bristol City and he failed there. Yeah. If a manager like that turns us down because the conditions aren't good enough, then what's ultimately about what the next guy is going to be stepping into? I mean, we know it's bad, but how bad really is it? And is it that much of a delicious prospect for anybody when you're looking at all of the ramifications? I honestly think that whoever comes in may well end up being up a short, who gets a 1-year deal, comes here, stabilises the club for the next man to come in once all of this mess has been sorted out over the next season, because I think it's going to take another year in debt and player turnover and all the rest of it. I think it's probably going to take a year of change before this is a real prospect for anybody to take on, and that's got to be considered too. Would somebody like Neil Warnock be more suited to this job, for instance, who has done that countless times, went in clubs and spent a year there and really been able to get the best out of what he's got, but also make something of it and develop it a little bit for the next manager. He's done that at quite a few clubs, hasn't he? And even achieved promotion with a few with those ramifications. So that's something to consider too, which you haven't really heard many people speak about. Is this more of a case of somebody comes in, knows that it's a year just to tide us over until the real work can start, when Short's maybe gone, the debt's cleared, the majority of players that are gone, and we've got more championship-ready squad. Is it then a case of looking at someone like McInnes in a year's time and saying, right, we've cleared the decks and it's ready for you to step in now and do the dirty work?
I suppose potential managers would be wary of something like that. Do you know what I mean? Coming in to just do us a job, tide us over. I think, going back to what you just said about like someone who's already at the club, do you know what I mean? Like looking at talking about Bracewell, Stockdale, do you know, is that the sort of thing that would be considered? I mean, getting a caretaker manager in like that for a year, I think that would be a terrible decision if that was the case. And surely money's better than that. I know money's too tight to mention, but it's good. I mean, for me, I'm talking about Bracewell and Stockdale, like, because we do have this plan to speak about these guys. I mean, it's more a case of what they do. That's what we're really sitting here wondering. Well, their exact roles in the club. Obviously, they have roles in the club, and you see them on the touchline He's been talking to various players and things like that. But they haven't gone anywhere, despite the massive turnover in managers. It's interesting that these two people are still there. Now, is that because can we not get rid of them? Is there some sort of something put in place by all people? Owner Ellis Short, would he actually do that? Would he go out of his way to protect the jobs of two people like that? I mean, I personally can't see it. What do you make of it, Gav? Is that really likely that Ellis Short would go out of his way to say to his managers, "Look, do what you want, but don't get rid of Bracewell and Stockdale"? I don't think
it's necessarily just. I think what they're trying to do behind the scenes is perhaps put a structure in place which ensures that it doesn't matter who the manager is, they don't have to overhaul the entire coaching staff every single time somebody leaves, because I think it's been since maybe Poirier was here that a manager's had the staff that he wanted. I think Advocaat's staff were Bracewell and Stockdale, and since then every manager since has had them on the coaching staff. So to me it indicates that they're not willing to sack people first. And it also indicates that Bracewell and Stockdale are maybe not costing the club a lot anyways, because they're pretty cheap to keep around. Stockdale, in fairness to him, did a really good job with the under-23s and was given a chance to step up to the first team. And by all accounts, he is a really nice guy to have around the place. The players like him. I can't speak for his coaching credentials, but you would assume that.
Well, he seems to be the second point of contact, really, doesn't he?
Yeah, the good guy in the relationship sort of thing. But
he talks to the linesman and things like that. Yeah, he's that guy.
And you've got to kind of consider with him, I guess, that we're going to be looking to bring through young players this year, and he's worked with most of them for quite a long spell of time, being the manager mainly. So that's pretty important, I guess. Bracewell, though, I have absolutely no idea what that bloke's doing at the club. He's just there, isn't he? He's just a dour, sour face. He's like an even worse version of him. He's just grey and miserable and sits there with his arms folded, and I just wonder what his role is really. What does he even do? I think he was something to do with the academy before they came in, and then Allardyce brought him up as a first team coach. But what does he even do? He's just
there.
He's just there. What like? If you're the next manager coming into Sunderland, you don't want Paul Bracewell working with you. You want your own people, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what. Again, it's something it's something I worry about, because ultimately, I think they're just going to be there regardless. It's like when they're interviewing these managers and they're sitting down with them, they're going, "Look, this is the crack. We've got this much to spend. You've got these restrictions. You've got these players out. You're not going to be able to bring in your own coaching staff because that's just our policy. With the turnover of managers has been too great, and ultimately we've led to the point where we're just trying to put a structure in place where, regardless of who the first team manager is, the rest falls into place regardless." And they've kind of recruited for that, haven't they? They recruited a new academy manager last year, for instance. So you can see that. But anybody coming in is going to be looking at all that and going, "God, what a job I've got on my hands. Like, I've a lot to work with. I can't really demand too much because they've already spelled out what it is that the job entails. Do I really want to move from, all right, an albeit smaller club, but where I've got it good and I've built something good and the chairman appreciates us, the fans appreciate us, the players arrive. Do I want all of that to uproot and take on a challenge as big as this?" And I think it's honest, I do. I think managers from the likes of Aberdeen and Barnsley are going to look at that and think, is it worth? Is it not just worth us waiting around seeing if another offer comes along? Because my name's out there now. Is it worth waiting around for another championship club to come along and offer us the role there where the structure is better? And that again, it all ties in with Stockdale and Bracewell. What are they doing here? There's a lot of fans have been asking that the last few days. I noticed reading on Ready to Go, there's a thread on there. People are asking questions about, why are they still here? Is it a case of, they were always going to be safe, regardless of what happened with Moyes or not? And it certainly appears that way because they're still here. I mean, hopefully whoever comes in, just they actually allow them to at least have an assistant manager or something, because it's just, again, what really changes around the place when they start taking the same training sessions. The players, all right, certain things might change, but how are they going to respond differently to the same coaches? Really, you know.
Sorry, Karen Gray.
No, I was going to say that's what I was going to say. It's funny you mentioned about Stockdale and made the point that obviously he's worked with players like Honeyman and players like that, hasn't he? And I suppose in a sense I can totally see the point of keeping Stockdale around. He seems to be someone who plays and stuff like that. But I'm trying to think from the players' perspective. I think we're going to keep more players than you'd expect. And I think those players, as much as they're gutless and spineless, and there's many words we could use to describe them, at the same time, the ones that are still going to be here, including the young lads, they want people like not Bracewell and Stockdale. I want someone fresh and new. I think getting Moyes out. I remember the day David Moyes left, how refreshed we all felt as players. We see in the dour face of Moyes, the even dourer face of Bracewell, and I mean, bloody hell, he's got a dour face. I mean, of all the dour faces you've seen, he's like the king of dour faces, Bracewell, isn't he? And then,
man, I think wouldn't that have been reserved for David Moyes? But still, anyway, carry on there.
And then you've got Stockdale, who by all means is probably all right to keep around. But if I'm being honest, you've got to go one way or another. And I think Gav's point of bringing in someone for a year to kind of stabilise stuff and make sure we don't just into the next bloody division, or we've got to just completely clear the decks of these out of contract players and the backroom staff and the manager's obviously already gone. But I just think we need to get rid of the whole infrastructure that's there at the minute from right at the top, and obviously getting rid of Ellis Short and things like Martin Baines are a lot more difficult than getting rid of coaching staff. But I think at least on the training pitch, just get something completely fresh in. And I think if you're going to give someone like McInnes the job, or Mike's the job, you've got to get someone who's his own people. I mean, you look at when Roy Keane came in, and it was like the people Roy Keane appointed had a similar mindset, and that's why he employed them. So all around the club, you would have had a similar mindset and a similar thought process. Realistically, you could put pretty much anyone on the training pitch. You're still going to have Bracewell doing what he did last year with the same attitude, and Stockdale maybe doing the same thing. I think it's maybe harsh on Stockdale, but get something completely freshen everything up as much as we can. But that's what we need. We need it refreshed. It's been the same shite for 5 years. We need it refreshing as much as we can. And hopefully Ellis Short is the first one to go, but it's a little bit more difficult than it is getting rid of a couple of coaches, isn't it?
Mm. What do you make of it all, Jimmy?
I just think we've got way more important things to be worried about. I just feel that we're looking at a summer where we don't know how many players leaving. We don't know what's going to happen with our players that are out of contract. We don't know who the manager's going to be, what the budget is. We don't know how much of transfer funds we raise. It's going to go on players. We don't know how many free transfers we're going to have to make. How many players that we sign on loan are we going to bring in? There's so many unknowns. I just think we've got much bigger fish to fry than two members of our backroom staff. How much for say is Rob McKenzie going to have transfers? What does our chief football officer do? I just think there's much more important things going on with our structure of our football club over the next 3 to 6 months that whether they're there or not, it really doesn't bother me. I think there's much stuff going on with this club that we need to have a look at, to be honest.
So you wouldn't agree that there's some possibility that they might be part of that whole rotten core setup that we've heard so much of?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It could be. It's just a case of they're hard to move.
To worry about that now.
Yeah, exactly. There's just so much to do this summer. It's
fair enough. Well, with that in mind, obviously we've got a little bit of time left to talk about some transfers. Now, obviously, the rumour mill will be in full swing. It hasn't even got into full swing yet. It's going to kick off like mad when we do get a manager in. Because obviously everyone will be told that despite the fact we haven't got any money, the new manager will come in with a headline that says something like, such and such given war chest. Do you know what I mean? Ellis Short opens checkbook. Things like that. Things, complete lies and fallacy to get you to buy these terrible rags. But regardless, we will discuss the potential of transfers. Is there anyone that you see us realistically, specifically being able to bring in, or is it more of a, should we be focusing on just blanket quality? So obviously it's substandard, but are we looking to increase to better the entire squad, or are there certain positions that we need to fill? Go on, Graham.
I think we've discussed this like as a group loads of times, but I think we've got to look at centre forwards because we're pretty much losing all of them. Like Defoe is going to go. Anichebe, I don't think Anichebe's going to get offered another contract if he wants one. Then you've got Barini, who, fingers crossed, disappears as fast as possible for a good chunk of what we paid for him. So what have you got left after that? There's nothing really. So I think the scary thing for me is how much allegedly of a small budget we've got, if there's even a budget. And I mean, I've looked at the free transfer list and nothing really fills me with confidence. I think Gav said it a few times. You need about 4 strikers in that division. The amount of games you have, you kind of go in with like 2. But where are we going to get decent money for 2-3 centre forwards that are going to, if we haven't got like a pot of piss in? And then we're forgetting about the fact that Pappy's probably going to leave, thankfully, but still it's ahead. Kone is going to go. So centre halves he'll want. John O'Shea probably going to stay in, and I hope he does. In the midfield, you've got Catamo and was injured. You've got Ndong, who, might have some interest in if we need to sell. And then we've got to replace the goalkeeper as well. So we're pretty much, we might have to replace the goalkeeper. I hope not, but we're kidding ourselves if we think Pickford's going to stay. And I think in terms of targets, I spoke about it on the site a few weeks ago. I think someone like Jason Cummins is a realistic signing. And I think the problem we've got is, although our expectations are low, because we're quite a depressed bunch at the minute, we still do hope that we're going to at least be pushing playoffs, if we're honest, because we're big and there's no such thing as too big of a club for a division, but we've got the potential to be bigger than the division we're going to be entertaining. And I think when it comes to signing certain players, we've probably got to lower the expectations a little bit because of the budget. And I think we've got to be looking at players like maybe the Scottish League wouldn't be a bad shout, because it's not like that they live in Scotland, they play in Scotland, so living in it won't be that weird. And you can unearth some real gems in that division. You can pick up a lot of shit as well, but realistically, beggars can't be choosers at the minute. And the scary thing is, I think we're going to be beggars. But to answer the question, I think we need a good few centre. We need a good few centre halves. I think aside from that, we can probably get away with trying out some of the youngsters in terms of like fullback positions and that. But I don't know. It's a job I want to have, if I'm honest with you. I don't envy Martin Bain or the new manager in any way, shape, size, or form on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. We ran a good feature on the site today. Actually, people listening probably read it, but scouting about feature that Carl does, and it's just him identifying players that we could go for in the summer, etc. And like players that are maybe below our expectation level, but would probably do a job. And he wrote a bit about a guy called Ollie Watkins at Exeter, and I don't really know a great deal about this. I want us to sign him. Carl's made him sound like a real world beater. But it's the type of player I would like us to go for, because if you look down the food chain, again, League 1 and 2, mainly League 1, I would say, there's a lot of young lads playing in teams in that league around the age of 20, 21, who leave academies when they were 15, 16, went on to play for youth sides of clubs like Exeter, and have then went on to gain a lot of first team football, and then obviously show that they're a lot better than what they were maybe perceived to be when they were kids. Watkins is no stranger to that. He's 21-year-old, yet is pulling off trees in that league. He's got pace. He's strong, and it makes you think, what's the difference between a player like him playing at that level and then stepping up a couple of leagues? We saw it with Dele Alli a couple of years ago, didn't we, at MK Dons? People were like, well, why are they spending $5 million on him? And he's now won 2 fields in the Premier League, and it just shows that there is talent out there if you go out and find it. You've got to recognise these kids have proved themselves at such a young age. Cummins is a good example, like what Graham said before. He's playing for Hibs in the Scottish Championship, but he's scoring a lot of goals, and you've got to maybe wonder whether a kid like that could come to somewhere like Sunderland, and you would say it definitely is a step up for one. Would he come here, kick on, improve, and would we unearth gems basically from some of these smaller clubs? Yeah. But even aside from players like Cummins and this Watkins guy, there's a lot of decent players who would probably do all right for us, being made available for transfer this summer. And I'm just going to reel off a few names here, but I'm going to assume that a lot of people will turn their nose up at them. But players in the toilet who couldn't get a club last summer, and then he went to Cardiff and has had a really good season. It's somebody that I would like because he's got pace. He gets in the opposition's box and creates chances, which is something we've not had from a time. He's available for nothing. And you've got to kind of look at the free market now and think, all right, these players wouldn't have made a difference for us in the Premier League, but would they make a difference in the Championship? He's a good age. And like I say, he's got all of these attributes that would definitely improve us out wide. So why not take a chance on someone like Junior Hoylett, who, he didn't do great at QPR, but he's went to Cardiff this year under Neil Warnock and really done well. George Boyd's another one, probably going to be released from Burnley. I don't think he's a bad player at all. A tricky player who he plays most weeks for Burnley, you know what I mean? So are these the type of players that we have to look at? Charlie Adams, another one, released from Stoke. They've just replaced him today with Darren Fletcher. Not everybody's favourite person, but he scores goals and he's good on set pieces. Would he add more to our midfield than, say, Darren Gibson? I would say so. There's a couple of fullbacks available. Cyrus Christie, who's an Ireland international, big, quick lad, plays right back, and Zeki Friars from Palace, who used to be at Spurs, I think. They're both going to be up for transfer in the summer for free. And John Ruddy and he keepers, we might need a backup keeper in the summer. I'm presuming Mannoni's going to leave. God knows what's going to happen with Mika, and then Pickford, we're going to be lucky to hang on to him. But even if Pickford stays, like Wayne Hensey or John Ruddy, be a decent backup. I would say so. And these are the type of players we have to look at. Ultimately, all right, they wouldn't have been good enough for us last season in the Premier League, but we've got a lot of work to do this summer with the squad, regardless of who the manager is. And frees and loans are going to make up the bulk of our squad, I feel. I think there's going to be that many players leaving that there's going to be a lot of gaps to fill that we can't rely on the kids to do. There's not enough of them already.
The time that we should be pushing the Stephen Pienaar button. We pushed it too early.
No, well, not necessarily that. Thing is, though, I'm looking at the players that are available in the summer, and some of them are of good age. Like I say, Hoylett's not that old. Ross Wallace might even be available, who's been brilliant for Sheff Wed this season, and he might be available in the summer. Fraser from Palace used to be at us. Obviously, we know what he can do. Available on a free, like Graham said before, we might need 4 strikers. Would somebody with a bit of pace and like Campbell, would he make a difference in the trip? I would say so. As a squad player, definitely. Sanogo from Arsenal's available on a free. 24-year-old, kind of a forgotten man. He's had a bad injury, but
I didn't realise he was available. I would take him.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, 24-year-old. Yeah, 24-year-old. He spent a big chunk of the last year out injured. He came back like nothing. And he played a game for the reserves and scored, and it was like they made a big deal out of it because he'd been injured for so long. He's a bit of a cult figure there because he hasn't really done much, but he's still young, isn't he? And he's big. Would he be worth giving a couple of years to? You never know. I'm not saying that these players are going to come to Sunderland, but that's what I'm saying. We've got to kind of open our eyes a bit and look at some of these players that are available and say, yeah, right, they weren't good enough for us in the Premier League. But could they make a difference in the Championship? Even Grant Ledbetter's available in the summer. Middleton, he was great for them in the Championship the year they got promoted. They might opt to keep a hold of him, but I don't think they will because he's 31-year-old, but he's a Sunderland lad. Did very well for us before he left. Is that somebody we could bring in? There's a lot of options out there. I just think the main thing in the summer, regardless of the manager, is we have to treat every signing with the same sort of respect. We have to give them all a chance, and we have to remember that we're not a Premier League club anymore. The quality of these lads coming in isn't going to be the same. But anyway, we brought in players like Adnan Januzaj last year. We all thought the world of them when they first got here, and it didn't take very long for the true colours to show. I would rather see hungry players come to this club who prove themselves on a big stage or want a career rebirth, something along those lines. I would rather see that than see us give another minute to a player like Jack Rodwell.
Yeah, so, absolutely. I don't think anyone can really argue with that theory. I mean, it's interesting. Just going back a second to talking about the scout, and we've been saying, like Graham said, he wouldn't envy that job. Do you know what I mean? It's a difficult job to have. Just a question that popped into my head: would it be fair to say that perhaps over recent years, I don't know whether it's the influx of money, like the massive influx of money, or I think it probably is mainly that, or any other kind of social factor or financial factor, about bringing in like actual scouted players. Do you know what I mean? Like how much importance is put on the scouting of players in the actual action itself by us as fans. I mean, it seems to me like we ignore it. Do you know what I mean? We base things on what we've seen and what we've heard. That's natural, but there was a time when you would have complete faith in your chief scout. Do you know what I mean? And he would bring you consistent. And there are still scouts in a lot of teams consistently bring you talent and quality players. They know exactly what you need, and they go out and get it. So, is it fair to say that as fans, we don't quite understand the process as much as we think we do?
I think it's a really interesting time for football now in terms of how you scout players. If you have a look at, say, how driven clubs are becoming, how now we're looking at the stage where there's radars where things like shot locations and expected goals have now been knocking about in sort of the football public for the last 5 years. Sort of Brentford, a data-driven club that are overachieving in the Championship. You look at what Southampton are doing. You go and you have a look at, say, Huddersfield, another club that have placed a big emphasis on data getting promoted to the Premier League. And there's now a point where there's guys who are out there who are looking for certain things, certain aspects in players, and you can either embrace that or you can't. And I just look at Sunderland, I think we are way behind. We are way, way behind. We tried to move forward. We tried the director role about 3, 4, 5 years ago. And we had the wrong people in place for it to work. And then because of that, we've abolished it. And we've gone back to the cult of the manager with David Moyes, who was Martin O'Neill 2.0, but a worse Martin O'Neill who couldn't organise a defence. And you just have a look at what we're doing in terms of scouting, and based on the Jack Rodwells of this world that we've hired in the last few years, based on the last 2 transfer windows you've had, you've just got to say, we've been doing a terrible job of it. Now, whether a football officer that came in November is going to make a difference, whether our recruitment specialist, Mr. McKenzie, is going to make a difference, I don't know. But it's something that, as a club, we have to look at. And as a club, we've done a terrible job at. So that's going to be a really interesting thing to look at this summer. Where are the players we come from? How much money are we spending on them? And what's been the basis that made us go out and say, yeah, that's the right guy for this club? What are we seeing that he can do? What are we seeing that he's not good at? And what's the skill set that's going to make him a useful Championship player?
So the key here is be thorough. Be thorough, think about it, and get it done as soon as possible with all expediency. I would completely agree with that. And, well, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's pretty much what we've got time for today. Our final thought for the day, really, is it's all about the new manager and the search for one. So, I mean, with the search for a new manager, there's no small amount of doubt, really, and certainly in regards to the ability of any candidate. There are managers with traits that we perhaps wouldn't like to see or particularly want to see, perhaps a lack of experience that puts you off a manager, anything like that. There are loads of different reasons that you can be unsure about something like this. I think the important thing to remember, though, is that this is football, and in football, absolutely anything can happen. So I'm not willing, and I don't think any fan should be willing, to turn their nose up at a lot of people that might be unknown. Do you know what I mean? They might be relatively, or as we've said, but we've seen managers do terribly in past performances and then come out strong when they need to with the right club for them. So that's really all I would say going into the future. Keep an open mind, just like Gav was saying earlier. Like when it comes to players, when it comes to managers, we have to accept now that we're fighting that battle, aren't we? It's all by the skin of our teeth now. Or it's not the skin of our teeth anymore, but we're in it deep now. Do you know what I mean? There's no getting out of it, and this is just what it is, and this is what it's all about, really, isn't it? This is the excitement, the roller coaster ride of football. I'm happy that we are where we are now. I have a lot of optimism for the future, in spite of the fact that I have no reason to be optimistic. On a slightly unrelated side note, I would also say if we don't see you between now and the general election, do the whole country a favour and vote Labour. Just do that for us, and I'll buy you a pint. Don't forget then that you can subscribe to us on Acast. You can subscribe to us on iTunes. This is the Roker Rapport signing off.